Today we're going to be installing the JounJip mechanical double keypad lever lock. This is a lever lock with a square spindle. If you have a flat spindle, then you need a separate video that you can find on YouTube. Okay, when you unbox your lock, the first thing you need to find is this card. This has the code for your lock. You can use this because it's been randomly preset at the factory. It's a unique code for you. Or if you want to change it to your own code, we'll show you how to do that later in the video. So next, let's look at our parts here. You have your instructions that should come with it. You also have a template. I'll show you how to use that. Here we have two different latches, 70 millimeter, which is 2 3/4 inches, or 60 millimeters, which is 2 3/8 inch. This is your primary keypad. There's no screw holes at the top and the bottom. This is your secondary keypad, has the screws. Also, the seals that go behind the keypad. We have two of these screw extensions, which screw into the back of the primary keypad. We have the spindle, and we have 3 sets of screws, short, medium, and long, depending on how thick your door is. We also have some other parts, some extra washers that go between the handle and the keypad, some pins for changing your code, some tweezers for taking the pins in and out, and those will come in this little box of parts. These locks come from the factory with the handle in this position. So we're going to have to turn it around, and inside here there's a screw that we're going to have to remove. And then once we do that, we can put the handle in the right position and then put the screw back in. To determine which way to put the handle, if this is the outside of our door, then we want to take the primary keypad, the one with no holes, and that goes on the outside of the door. And so that means we want the handle facing towards the hinges like so. The same is going to be true if this is the inside of our door. The secondary keypad with the screw holes will go on the inside of the door with the lever handle facing the hinge. So now that we've determined which way the handles go on, we can install the screw and tighten it back up. Next, let's measure the backset to determine which size of latch we need to use. The backset is the distance from the edge of the door to the center of the borehole, if you have a borehole existing already. So that is the 60 millimeter backset. If you have this borehole already drilled, that's going to save you some work, because we need to drill a hole at the top and 2 holes at the bottom. But if you have that borehole, you don't need to drill those 2 holes. If you don't have this hole, then you probably don't have a hole for the latch either. So if you need to drill this hole, I highly recommend that you go to a hardware store or order online a jig that clamps to your door, and will give you a guide to make sure that you drill that hole straight and level. If you do have to drill out a latch hole, then you're going to need to create a 1/8 inch deep mortise here. That's this recessed cavity. So the way you do that is you trace around your faceplate of your latch, and then you take an X-Acto knife and cut along the line that you drew, and then take a chisel and remove the wood 1/8 inch deep, and then your latch faceplate will be able to sit flush with the edge of your door. If you already have a latch hole drilled, then it should already have this recess already built in, and you don't need to do this. First, let's figure out what template to use. We have a left hinge door template and a right hinge door template. Because on our door sample here, we have, this is the outside of the door. The hinge is on the left side, so we're going to use the left hinge door template. So we're going to cut along the center and then use the left hinge door template to determine where we need to drill our holes. So on our template, you'll notice it says fold here for a 2 3/8 inch backset latch, or fold here for a 2 3/4 inch. We have 2 3/8 inch, so we're going to fold on that 2 3/8 inch line and put that right on the corner of the door. And then we're going to take this dotted line right here and put it right in the center of the latch hole. If you don't have a latch hole, that will show you where you need to drill it. And have some tape already, and put a piece of tape on there. Double check your line that you're lined up. Come around to this side, put one in the middle, and then the 2 corners. You want it nice and flat and smooth. If you have wrinkles in it, just redo it. Now you're ready to drill. So now we need to drill our top hole. This one here, it says 5/16. We can go a little bit bigger than that. I would go with a 3/8. And it helps if you start with a smaller bit and drill a small hole first before you try to use the larger bit. Down here, since we already have the bore hole, I don't need to drill these 2 holes. But if we didn't have this bore hole, then we would need to drill these 2 also. And then we already have our latch hole here, so I don't need to drill that. But if we did need to drill a latch hole, then this dotted line shows the center of the hole where it needs to be. And you would center it in the middle of the door. One other important thing to remember is that when you're drilling your hole, you want to make sure that you're going through level and straight through the door. If you're going a little bit at an angle, up or down or to the side, then that will put things a little bit off kilter and could create a problem. That's also why I suggest making the hole a little bit larger, and that way if you are a little bit slightly off angle, it will allow some extra space to accommodate that. Now that we've drilled our holes, we're ready to install our latch. We've already determined that we need a 2 3/8 inch backset latch. That's the distance from the edge of the door to the center here. And you notice this square is right in the center. We want the rounded part of the latch to meet the rounded part of the strike plate. We have 2 screws to put this in. You may want to pre-drill the holes for these screws with a 1/16 inch drill bit. Good. Before we install our seal, we're just going to place it against the door and make sure that the holes are lined up. If you see the door behind one of the holes, then that means you need to make a correction. The seal has 2 small holes that, if you prefer, you can screw the seal directly to the door. This option is more advanced because you need to get your seal in exactly the right position, and so that can be tricky. What we recommend is to tape the seal to the keypad using painter's tape. Next, we're going to take our primary keypad, the one with no holes on it, and we're going to turn it around, and we're going to install the screw extension in the top and bottom holes. Then I like to take a wrench and just give them a little bit of a snug down. Before we insert the spindle in the primary keypad, let's just take it, and we're going to take the end without the spring, and we're going to put it into the back of our secondary keypad so that we can test it. So we'll turn it around, press the clear button, pull this back to see our numbers. And then we'll turn the handle and make sure that spindle turns. Next up, we're going to take our spindle, and the side that has the spring we're going to insert into the back of the primary keypad. We can turn it around and to keep one finger on the spindle so it doesn't fall out. And then we're going to enter our code. Okay, and then I'm going to turn it around. See, I'm holding the spindle in with one finger, and then I'm going to turn the handle, and we can see that the spindle turns. Let's do that one more time. Always press C before you enter your code. This is just a sample code. And then I'm going to keep the spindle pressed in. I'm going to turn it, and it turned. So we've tested both of our keypads. They're both working properly. So now we're ready to attach them to the door. So we're going to take our primary keypad with the spindle, and we're going to insert it through this hole right here, this square hole. And then our screw extensions will go through the top hole and the bottom. And then on this side, the spindle will insert into the secondary keypad and slide that up like that. Our door here is 1 3/8 inches thick. So that means we're going to use the shortest screws, the 50mm screws. Sometimes it's easier if you take a flashlight and look in there, and you can see the screw extension post and make sure it's lined up. That makes it starting a little easier. You may want to start with the bottom screw too, because it tends to be a little bit lined up better because of the spindle. Don't tighten it all the way yet. Let's get the top one lined up. Let's just look at them, make sure that the lock looks like it's straight, even with the side of the door, that it's not crooked. We also want to make sure that the two sides are at the exact same height. You want them lined up straight across from each other, and that will help the lock work better.
Now tighten the screws the rest of the way.
To operate the lock, we're going to press C to clear it, and then we enter our code, and then we turn the handle, and you can see that the latch plunger opens. After we release the handle, it's locked again. If you want to put the lock into what we call passage mode, where you don't need to enter a code to open it, first press C, then your code, and then Y. The lock opens, and then you can see that now we can open it without having to enter a code. To take the lock out of passage mode, we press Y and then C. Now it's locked again and requires a code to open it. The lock comes from the factory with a random preset code, which you're welcome to use. But if you don't want to use that, then before you put the lock on the door, you want to change the code. And it requires to be off the door because you have to open up the back, removing 2 red screws, and rearrange the pins inside. Be careful removing this back plate because, as you can see, there's springs attached to it. If one of those springs pops off, you can just pop it back into place. If you happen to lose a spring, then just let us know. We can send you a replacement. So in order to remove the pins and change them around, we have to press and hold the C button. Keep it pressed in, and you can see the pin for the C moves up when I press it, and I'm going to keep that pressed, and then I'm going to reach in with the tweezers and pull out the red code pins. So now I'm going to remove blue pins in 3, 4, 8, and 9. So now I'm going to take the red pins, which are our pins for the code numbers, and put them in 3, 4, 8, 9. And if you look carefully in each hole, there is a notch. This side has a notch at the top, and this side has a notch at the bottom. And on each pin, there's a little bump that has to fit in that notch. So on the right side, the bump needs to be up for the notch, and on the left column, the bump needs to be down. We're going to press our C button, and now we're going to take our red tipped pin with the bump facing up and put it in. And the same for the other side with the bump down. Now we're going to put blue pins in 1, 2, 6, and 7. So pressing and holding C, blue pin with bump up, blue pin with bump down. We also don't want X to be part of our code anymore, so we're going to press and hold C and then remove the X and insert a blue pin with the bump up. So now we've changed the code from 1267X to 3489. And you can see there's red pins in 3489 and blue pins and everything else. If before you go to put your back plate on, you find that one of the springs has fallen off, just push it back into the hole where it came out of, give it a little push, and it should pop back in. So now we need to put the plate back on the back of the keypad. Carefully place it, making sure the springs line up with each hole. Press it down and hold it in place, and then replace the 2 red screws. Thank you so much for buying the JounJip brand lock. Hope this video helped you. If you have any questions or you run into anything, please give us a call. We'd be happy to try to help. Thanks.